things for administrators, for therapists, for teachers, and for parents. First off, for administrators, it allows you to serve more children with the same resources and staff. When parents cling to IEP resources that are not producing results, Gemiini gives you a supportive way to redirect the conversation. Lessen severe cases and reduce costs. If you just save 2 or 3 students from going to non-public schools who are older and more severe, or from being able to take them from a very restricted, even padded environment and bring them into the main school classroom, you save thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that can be redirected into more programs. And you change the conversation to how do I get more resources for my child to how do I get more results. And I want to really emphasize this. How do I get more resources for my child versus how do I get more results? When I was first given the news that my children had autism, it was from schools, the school SLP, OT, the school administrator in a big conference room. And as I sat there begging and pleading for more services for my son, had the administrator looked at me and said, "What do you want? Do you want more results or do you want me to spend more money?" I would have taken me aback and I could have said, "I want more results," and it would have changed the direction of the conversation. Teachers have a clinically valid tool to use in the class. Tactics are customized to each child. Classroom aids become highly effective. Gemiini group sessions are not only evidence-based, they are fun and encourage social and attending skills. This is so important. As you know, teaching in groups is essential in the classroom. The classroom is set up this way. If you have everybody learning one-to-one, there's just not enough teachers, there's not enough space. When you get the kids together, you also add joint attention and social skills to that component, and you can use video modeling to teach those skills. Data collection lets teachers and home participation for strong parent-teacher cooperation. Right now, as a parent, I talk to lots of parents and they have no idea what's going on in the school. They don't know what their children are learning, what their children are working on. Since they don't know what what the objectives are, they don't see the incremental changes, and that's when they start to freak out because they don't see any movement. When you use Gemiini, the students are watching their videos at home and the parents see what they're working on. So if they're working on colors, the parents can sit at the dinner table and point out the colors. Driving around the house, the parents become an interactive part of the school, which calms them down. They're not litigious. And they see real improvement and everybody starts working together. Parents ask, a lot of the times they ask, what can I do from home? And this is something they can actually do with minimal training, as long as the teacher or therapist is creating the weekly sessions for the classroom. Parents can do 10+ hours of weekly at-home therapy. It allows for generalization at home, like I just said. They see the progress. It also has parental training built in. We teach parents by watching the videos not to let their students become prompt dependent. I can't tell you how many times I hear from parents, Johnny does XYZ at school and talks all day long and does all this stuff. When he gets home, he just sits there. I had one parent said that when the student is hungry, he goes in the refrigerator, pulls out the peanut butter and jelly and puts it on the counter and goes sits on the couch. And the parents come and dutifully make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so a lot of the times the parents are creating these prompt-dependent students, and by watching the videos we show the parents what they should be doing. It also allows for siblings to be peer models, and parents, as I said, become full part of the team. Therapy doesn't have to be limited to a fixed amount of hours anymore. As I showed you in the previous slide, it can be done outside of therapy time, pretty much unlimited. Allows you to easily advocate for more students for middle school and high school. ASHA's really big on this, and very few services are available for these older grades, but with something like Gemiini, the sky's the limit for this group of people, and we're showing that it's highly effective for them. Addresses the 3 big frustrations we hear from therapists: child who needs more one-to-one time. I have therapists who write to me literally crying because they come home and they know that they could reach this child if they just had more time with him, and they just don't have it. Or the opposite, where the therapists know that consulting with the teacher would be a much better use of their time, but the parents have fought so hard for one-to-one services, they won't relinquish them. And being from the parent side, I totally get that. But the parents don't understand that having that training for the teacher in the classroom is going to be more beneficial because the teacher's with the student all day. With Gemiini, you can actually have it all. The most difficult, scarce resource is not just money or people, it's knowledge and experience. The knowledge and experience that you have as professionals that over your lifetime and over your training, instead of being used holding flashcards, you can become strategic in the student's life. About 20 years ago when my husband was a CPA, he did everything with a ledger and a 10 key. Before that, just a few decades before that, it was pen and pencil because they didn't even have calculators. You know, after he was a CPA for about 5 years, something called Microsoft Excel came out. And I never heard CPAs complaining that Microsoft Excel was going to take their job. Excel is a tool. Gemiini is a tool. The more experience and knowledge you have in your profession, the better you will be at using this tool. It's no different. It allows the therapist to efficiently use her knowledge and experience to be strategic, just the way a CPA uses Excel. And as we're going through this presentation, I want you to think of Gemiini as the Excel for therapy. Also, we really don't have a choice because, as I've talked about before, a good third of our population, 20% third, are non-responders. No matter what we're doing, it's not working for them. Eileen Schwartz, who's one of the most well-known persons in the field of behavior analysis out of Washington State University of Washington, she wrote, "All of the authors of this article are keenly and painfully aware of the lingering issue of the non-responders to otherwise evidence-based practices. The only answers have been tried and they have failed. The non-responders are not just the older at-entry group. They are not simply the offspring of families living in poverty, and they are not the children who got less of something. It is noteworthy to point out that the vast majority of discrete evidence-based tactics were developed 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years ago. We desperately need innovation to expand the range of intervention options. In the social sciences, we are traditionally incremental and conservative. Safe science gets funded. Being on the cutting edge often means not making the cut. We would offer the view that non-responders and their families cannot wait for incremental developments in the field." I do a lot of research, as you saw. Many times I've applied for grants to try to get this through grants. It's almost impossible to do anything through grants in a timely manner. It takes years. I was awarded a grant 2.5 years ago. We just got the check last month. In that time, everything has changed. So if you can imagine from a university level what they're trying to do is almost impossible. You can't innovate when you're working with grants. You have to go to the private sector. That's why Gemiini, we just went out and we just did it. We raise money from investors because that's the only way we could really get things done in a timely manner. You don't see people like Microsoft waiting for grant money. Now I'm going to talk about how the practical application of Gemiini in the classroom is changing lives. Here we have this teacher again, and she's going to talk about Down syndrome and that little boy that was in the picture in the front. So,
before Gemiini, DeMarcus was nonverbal, and he had a hard time following instructions. So when we'd say clean up, he would not clean up. And so then after Gemiini came along, he started to initiate with his peers. He started following directions. I would say clean up, and he cleaned up and came to circle independently without any prompting. DeMarcus, since he's nonverbal, we were using a lot of sign with DeMarcus, or trying to, and he wasn't copying the signs that we were doing. So then after Gemiini, one of the things that was on the video at first was fish and crab. And so he watched the video, and along with the video, he was going, "What does a crab say?" And he was doing the signs immediately. So that was really exciting. That same day, I was doing Slippery Fish at Circle, which is a song that we do a lot in preschool. and he started making the fish face with his mouth, which is something that is very hard to do, to get that mouth closure, and we've never seen it with DeMarcus before. So he started going, which was really exciting. So we all cheered, and it was a big party, but we've seen great growth with him.
DeMarcus is a whirling dervish. He is in constant movement. I'm trying to teach him to slow down, to pay attention to what he's doing, because he tends to fall and is always in forward momentum. Since Gemini started, he's stopping, he's looking at what I'm doing, he's recognizing, there's a stop sign. He's recognizing that he needs to stop. He's recognizing that what I'm doing, he, for whatever reason, wants to imitate. And that's really cool. That the implications of this for my world are huge.
Now, it is well known with Down syndrome that even preschool students can learn to sight read. I've seen kids in preschool with hundreds of words. But there's a false sense of security that settles in because they're so far ahead of their peers that they think, oh, there's no reason or need to teach phonics early. He's way ahead of everybody else. And so phonics doesn't begin until it does with the neurotypical kids, and by that time they all take off. And what happens is there's an artificial ceiling in about 6th grade that I've noticed with Down syndrome where they don't really progress, and actually our system expects it, that kids with Down syndrome are not going to make it past middle school, typically. With Gemini, we are showing that people with Down syndrome can learn to read phonetically, even at a very early age. This is a comment from a mother who is using it with her child. We have been using Gemini for approximately 2 months with our son. In that time, his reading level has probably tripled. What's so amazing is that we can understand what he's saying. He was very hard to understand, but with the articulation tools in Gemini, we are amazed with the results. We couldn't be more pleased. This is one of the first times that we used Gemini with someone with Down syndrome, and the epiphany for us went off that, oh my gosh, you can actually improve articulation at the same time you're teaching reading, so it's a twofer. It's a big bang for the buck as far as time goes. This is a video of Silas. This was about 2 months after the mother had written this, so I think this was about 4 months into the reading program. He was almost 7 years old when he started Gemini. He was at a preschool level of reading. We forgot to put a mic on him, so he's a little bit low in his volume.
Here we go, Silas. Can you read this to me?
Down at bright at night.
Dan is bright at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Down of the to will be all right.
Thank goodness he has a nice mom, huh? Yeah.
Down the run owl like sky night.
Yeah. What's
Flight.
the flight? Yes. Good.
Down the owl in the moonlight.
Yes, he does.
Down the owl high in the sky.
He does.
The sun comes up, so there feels all right.
Oh, so he's not scared anymore.
No,
Who is that?
Dad.
And who else is called Dan that you know?
Dad.
Your dad is Dan, too. So you got to read a book about your dad.
Yeah.
Do you think this book was about your dad when he was little?
Yeah.
And maybe his mommy?
Yeah.
Who's your grandma, right?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Grandma Val.
Grandma Val?
Yeah.
And do you like to read to her, too?
Yeah.
I bet she thinks you're so smart.
And sweet.
Yes.
I love this kid. Okay, he is one of my favorites. And now I'm going to show you a video of a 4-year-old who uses Gemini for phonics, and he's reading quite well. And you'll be able to watch. I'm not going to play the whole video because it's pretty long, but you can see that he's definitely sounding out the words. He has Down syndrome too. here he says caps. So you see, as he said caps for cape, so he's reading phonetically, he just didn't get the E at the end. So this is, he's been doing this, this is his 10th week with the program. We also found that along with phonetics, Gemini improves articulation even with adults, which is a complete game changer for this population. This one parent writes, I seem to be holding my breath because I'm seeing so much more interaction, explaining of emotions, confidence in talking and answering questions, and in general, just more communication and language. From that one little video, Explain, my daughter is explaining things more to me and not hesitant. Before it was always, I don't know, if I asked her, how many of us as parents know that with our kids when we ask them, they'll, like this, I don't know. They know, they just can't get it out. From the video, Lucy, why are you mad, is coming explanations of why she is worried and mad about things. She is also very intent on pronouncing new vocabulary correctly. She looks at my mouth and repeats the vocab word over and over with very good articulation, loving it. And we see that people with Down syndrome start to hear themselves finally when watching Gemini. And they'll say something and then they'll stop and they'll correct it and they'll say it correctly. We also then just have the typical American vocabulary. We use very few words in this country compared to Britain. And my son, Max, who's on the spectrum, he reads incessantly, and he actually has a little bit of an English accent, and we don't know why that is. But he has this huge, vast vocabulary because he reads a lot. But when we're talking about this artificial ceiling with Down syndrome, if you're only going to stop at a 6th grade level, your vocabulary stops. And how do we judge people when we first meet them? Really on the level of their vocabulary. If someone with Down syndrome walks up to you and starts using these big words that are very specific, you think, wow, they're smart. And your perception of people with Down syndrome will change just by their vocabulary choices. This mother writes, success in action. Lydia is 12 years old with Down syndrome and has been doing advanced vocabulary with Gemini for a few weeks. Her teachers have already commented about her word choice in the classroom. Wow, Lydia, abrasive is a great word. So is reluctantly. Lydia wants to write a book. That's been her wish since she was little. Juicy words empower her to further believe that she can be an author. I created the advanced word part because I had kids who were studying for the SAT. And I already knew it worked for everybody else, so why not them too? And we have about 3,000 SAT level words where we act out the scenario, and if you watch them 10 times, you will know that word for the rest of your life. And so everybody can learn this way, and to actually not just take a vocabulary test on Friday and then never use a word again as long as you live, but incorporate it into your language. And we see this with bilingual children. We had one study that we did in a middle school where we wanted to teach them advanced vocabulary, and most of these children were Spanish speaking at home. And so we took one student group and we just showed them movies with high level vocabulary to think if they could get it from the environment of the movie, from the surrounding language. And one where we used Gemini, and Gemini outperformed by thousands of %. And you could hear them on the playground when they're saying, no hace eso, eso es absurd. And they would throw their vocabulary in the Spanish all the time. It was really cute. So it actually does work for all age levels and abilities, especially since children don't know whether a word is above them or not. It's just a word that they learn. So we are the ones who think that it's so impressive. It also works with severe apraxia. And I think this is one of the most encouraging things about Gemini. These are, again, those non-responders that we kind of give up hope. I have to say that. I hate to say that, but after a while you think that you're not going to be able to speak, and we're getting somewhere with these kids. This is a child who'd been in therapy for many years. He's 5 years old. He had autism, and he'd already been in therapy for 3 years. We are starting the Gemini program tomorrow. My son is 5, autistic, and has apraxia. I gave him a preview of the program this afternoon, and he repeated the words bike and bulldozer. I was in shock. This was just seconds of viewing, and he is responding. His ABA therapists are so excited to use his program too. I'm so glad that they will help guide me too. He is usually pretty serious, but he was so happy and giddy. Can't wait to see the progress. I'm going to show a video of him. This is the first time he's ever seen it, and for about 20% of the kids, they have this. Julie, come here.
3, 2, 1.
say bike.
Bike.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Bike.
Bike.
Bulldozer.
Shepherd, say bulldozer.
Bulldozer.
Oh.
Bulldozer. Bulldozer.
So this does happen quite a lot, actually, with kids immediately when they first see it, they start to talk. Not everybody, but quite a lot. Now, it doesn't always work, like I said, not everybody sees it right away. Some students take months. Some students take 6 months, 8 months before it finally clicks in. This is from a parent I have to share and hopefully will give others who are starting with Gemini some hope. My son is 3 with autism, has been nonverbal and only would just randomly babble. No imitation, no echolalia, just vocal play and definitely no functional speech of any kind. We started Gemini 4 months ago and he didn't say anything or imitate, but he started showing a huge increase in his interest in spoken language. I've been a Gemini believer since the beginning because I saw the change in him, even though he wasn't speaking. Well, he just started pointing to letters and saying them, and today this happened. I'm so excited. One thing that we see at the very beginning, even before the students start to talk, is everybody goes through the same sort of trajectory where they first become much more interested in the speaker's face and looking at the mouth. Their eye contact improves. They seem a lot less spacey, like they're more present with that active network catching on. Those are the things that we tell people to look for before expressive speech. Sometimes those things happen in 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 5 months. But here's a video of this student with saying his first apple. 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 So that's the generalization piece that Gemini cannot do, cannot take you to the store and let you see a whole bunch of different apples. That's when you have the most success and when you have teachers and therapists taking the kids into the environment. We used to take our kids to Target at the end of the week, whatever they were working on, because it had one whole aisle that they could just generalize kitchen items or whatever they wanted to do. So it's really important that you have that generalization piece. Videos cannot do everything. Now, as the students get older, the bridge between single word labels and functional communication can be sometimes insurmountable. You finally, every parent says, I just want him to talk, and he starts to talk. It's like, oh my gosh, and now I have to get him to talk functionally in sentences. There's all these hurdles. Gemini's really good at bridging that gap pretty effectively, and this is how we do it. This is a great example of exactly how it's done. I'm going to describe the picture. The picture has many different kinds of flowers.
She is describing the picture.
It has a hummingbird in the middle of it who's eating nectar from a flower. There are leaves. The leaves are green, and the flowers are pink and blue and red. I described the picture. So here I am using language, a lot of language in the description, but I'm also using verbs with tenses. We always introduce verb tense when we introduce verbs, even from preschool, which is very unusual, but kids can do it with the video format. And when they understand tenses, it opens up their world as far as communication. So watch what a student did after he saw this video.
The wheels were black, and the tires were black, and it's hot. The lights were nervous. And those are seats in the car. And it is sports. Well, just having this other seats. And you say you're describing the picture.
You are describing the picture.
And lights were blue and green all day. They had a red-nosed reindeer. I described the picture.
Wow, awesome.
That was the best example I've ever seen of generalization of a video. There we go. Also, we see with older people, especially, that as soon as language comes, adverse behaviors decline dramatically. We'll talk about this a little bit later so that students can be taken from very restrictive environments in school and brought back into the classroom. I love this comment because it explains specifically what's going on in somebody's head. My son is 29 and has autism. We started using Gemini about 10 days ago. I created a video for him on WH questions. He's watched it about 14 times so far, and today I noticed 2 responses from him that were really different. He was looking at his fingernail, which got hurt about a month ago in a door, and he mentioned that he cried. So I asked him, "Why did you cry?" And he answered, "Because I smashed my finger in the door and it hurt." Common responses to that same question in the past would have been either no response, or I cried because I cried, or I was sad. I was really excited about his clear, complete response today. The second thing was that I asked him some questions about the book he is reading. Usually after 2 questions, he would get agitated and really not want to ask me to ask any more questions. Today I asked him 5 questions, and he answered them all and didn't get agitated. I love seeing this progress. So the student has more tools to explain emotions. That's one of the biggest frustrations for people who are older on the spectrum, is they can't explain what they're feeling, and so they act out. And the student has more confidence and less difficulty and anxiety, so you see that interaction can carry on for longer. This is what happens when speech therapists use Gemini in the school. "Hi, I'm a speech therapist in Clark County School District in Las Vegas. I paid for a Gemini account out of my own pocket for a sweet 4-year-old student I service. He had been receiving 2 hours of ABA before school, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Then he goes to an autism preschool program in the district where I provide 240 minutes of speech therapy a month. And he was making little or no progress. I was literally crying myself to sleep over this little guy. I stumbled upon Gemini on Facebook and said, what have I got to lose except $100? So now it's been 2 weeks and he is spontaneously pointing, imitating the sound animals, the animal actions, even some animal sounds. I'm beyond excited. I want this for every student. Our district needs this. Our kids need this. Thank you for this program. Thank you. He got those kinds of results so quickly because she had been doing all of the preparatory work, which happens. A lot of kids have lots of preparatory work, but we don't see the results. When you add Gemini, all of those skills that have been embedded come out. And how much more effective now is all this therapy that he's receiving once he's off to the races. You've got to get the kids moving. So Gemini increases working memory, which is the foundation for all learning. It helps with phonics, articulation, and sight words, language and social skills, instructionally dense and specifically repetitive, takes advantage of downtimes, suitable for all ages and abilities, efficient allocation of scarce resources, and team building. If you remember this video, of the X-ray. Well, this came about because a team of SLPs at Washington State University Hospital who use Gemini in their practice decided that they wanted to do this to teach other SLPs what interior formation of sounds looked like. I saw it and said, oh no, this is going to teach direct to students. They never thought about that because they didn't know about all the neurological research that I'm doing. This would have been stuck in journals for speech pathologists if it hadn't come across my desk. So we got together and we used our experience to help kids. When everybody in all of their silos, speech pathology, ABA, the neurodevelopmentalists, doctors, starts communicating and using the same tool, we're going to see huge advancements in this science. Especially when they start talking to each other. We're going to be launching a forum that's only for professionals on Gemini, where everybody's going to get a code name and they can talk openly back and forth about what they're seeing and bring experience from their silos to each other. And this was really brought home to me when I was talking with a BCBA a few years ago who has been in the business. She founded the business. She's been around for decades. She's very well respected and very well known in her industry. And she told me that she was currently researching video therapy, so teletherapy, to see if there's any history of it being effective. And with her looking through all of the journals that she looked at, she came up with the concept that no, teletherapy is not effective. It's not evidence-based. And I said, have you looked in the ASHA website? Because they have research that goes back about 25 years proving teletherapy to be very effective. It never occurred to her to look out of the behavior analyst journals. And that's a very related profession. So if you're talking about neurology and medical and all these other things, they're not talking at all. So this is pretty much, this is the passion of Gemini, is to bring people together, bring their experience together, bring their knowledge together, and really get those kids who are on the borderline anyway back in the school, in this classroom, mainstream in the classroom, so we can focus our research on the kids who really need us. Now, have any questions? Yes?
Okay, concerning Down syndrome, it's quite common that they develop stuttering. Have y'all found anything that this may, help correct those issues?
We have, I hear that a lot from people with students with Down syndrome, and I've also heard that when they start to use Gemini, the stuttering decreases dramatically. And I just think maybe it's, again, their brain is moving really fast, and so by slowing down that articulation, they hear it better. We are working with a group of SLPs to develop a stuttering curriculum for Gemini. We don't have it yet, but there's a really innovative SLPs who have this fantastic way of treating stuttering, and so we're working with them to do that. But just regular Gemini right now is helping. I don't have a lot of data on the stuttering yet. I'm kind of waiting until we film this new thing. Any more questions? Yes.
How do you suggest parents present this to their IEP team to get it into their child's curriculum?
We have a packet that we can give you to bring to them. It's very science-based because the schools by law, have to only use evidence-based practices, and that's why I spent 15 years doing this, because I had to get the research published first before I could really get it out there, and that takes a long time. So you just show them the science behind it, and then it's so intuitive, especially with speech pathologists, when they look at it and they say, oh yeah, I get this completely. So far I have not had one school in a organized setting like an IEP reject it. You sometimes have teachers do, because a parent walks in and say, we want to use this new thing, and the teacher's like, oh, I have so many new things in my drawer, I don't want to use another thing. They don't really know what they're talking about. But when it's presented correctly, it's very highly accepted. Anybody else? You can sit down with your, no, it has to be presented in a way so everybody knows what it is. If you just run in and throw it at the teacher, they're going to have their guard up because they have lots of things thrown at them, and like I said, they don't use it. Of course, yes, yeah. Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much.